Hello and welcome back to Clockwork Noodles, the channel where I continue to break down the anime of this amazingly jam-packed season. There are so many good animes that I just want to discuss this season and talk about, but I do feel like we have totally been blessed with a great season. To mark that and make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it, I am bringing you guys a midway review. A midway review which will focus on my top 3 OPs, EDs, and currently standing halfway through the season, my top 3 anime. It's a little interest of mine just to see how things change, whether my top 3 will change at the end of my final wrap up. So very excited to see how it goes. That will go up on the 10th of May, roughly around the halfway point when most of the anime airing will have episodes 5 and 6 out. Really excited to bring you guys that, and I hope you guys tune in to see that video. There is a Discord channel for you guys to lurk, and get a notification whenever videos go up on my channel. Very excited as well to be building that eventually up to something a bit bigger. We are back to 86. I do struggle to talk about this one, so I will be trying to focus in on things like composition, a bit lighting, the symbology, just because in general it's a very hard anime for me to discuss, and I really do not want to upset anyone, say the wrong things. So I'm going to try and just talk about the things that I can talk about, which is the composition, things like symbology. I can do all this. We are going to start with a reverse of our emotion-fueled speech from last week, where we can focus in on the button visual, the button falling off, everything snapping, spinning endlessly, showing us that the battle that is faced by those who live within the 86th district, they face daily. It is a never-ending cycle. And the fact that the audio at this point is played up even louder just shows how never-ending it really is. It's just a continuous cycle. It is very painful even the second time over, and this time seeing it from the side of those within the 86, it's even more painful because we actually get to see facial expressions, we get to actually see it physically, so we're not seeing it from Valenina's point of view where it's just names on a board. We get to see the human side, the human element, seeing everybody actually being pained by this loss. The synchronization is cut, and then we just have to wonder what next. How and where do you move on from this? And I have to admit, this episode is a beautiful quiet patch, which is needed after the tense episode that we had last week. This week we are going to open and focus in mainly on Theo, because Theo was the one who initially started the awakening process in a sense when it comes to changing perspectives, maybe looking at things a little bit differently when it comes to Valenina. I don't know if I got the name wrong last week on this one, so I do apologize if I got Theo's name wrong. I have a feeling I might have just picked up his first name, perhaps. Do have to credit Theo though on being absolutely talented when it comes to art. It may not look like a cat, but this looks absolutely amazing, and I can definitely see it becoming somebody's tattoo at some point. It looks great. Love the artwork. Theo is the one who draws all of the handlers or the caricatures. He is a very good artist. But we this week get to see life continuing, life moving onwards. So let's talk about a sequence I really like, mainly for composition. It is the sequence where we have Theo and Shin talking about what just happened essentially and their previous commander. But within this sequence, we see the space between the two. There is a pillar between them. There is a divide. Theo probably feels a little bit alienated, probably a bit cut off from everybody right now because of the way he's feeling. Because they are in the same district, but they do also feel a little bit differently the way they address things as well. That whole visual divide that we're seeing. The light within the sequence is really beautiful, and it's also quite gentle. We need a gentle moment after last week. It was quite a hefty episode. I did definitely go away feeling a little bit kind of tired after the editing and recording. It was just a very heavy episode in general. The light kind of fades us through and cuts to a lily in a jar. We already know this is how Valenina remembers the fallen members of her units. So this is her way of remembering. Lily, again, just in case we missed it, is just the death of something innocent. They are always used around funerals, and they generally represent something very innocent because white is a truly innocent colour. I think it's perfect as well just to represent the innocent lives that are being lost within their battlefield. The light is overly bright. We are very overexposed. Maybe hinting that San Magnolia is way too bright to even see beyond its borders, beyond the outside. It can't even look outside, or nor does it really want to see what's going on in the real world around it. Vladilina's reflection is another moment of downtime, which is really needed, but we also get to see once more divides within the same world in a way that Henrietta doesn't quite think the same way as Vladilina. We talk about the importance of names and how a name is your identity, it's how you are seen, it's you as a person. It also separates you out from the animals, that makes you different, seeing somebody with a name as an individual. But we also get to see a bit of a defeatist attitude in a sense, which is Henrietta's, which is the idea that if you can't do anything, you may as well not let it bother you, or maybe the fact that, there's no point dwelling on something if you can't change it. And it's a very interesting attitude. It's an attitude that I can definitely understand in a sense that you can't change anything. You may feel like it's impossible to really make a dent and change the way the world works, so you kind of choose to wall yourself away. Again, we have a overly bright background, which I think is very important within these sequences, because the world that these guys live in is very bright, and when things are too bright, you can't see the truth. You can't see beyond the light. You have to kind of close your eyes. It's almost like San Magnolia is trying to close its eyes from what's actually really going on. We get our flashback now. These flashbacks starting to play a very key role in showing us what kind of man Vladilina's father is. The man who actually is to thank for her worldview, the worldview that she wants to see people as humans and not see them as mere names on a board. You can see where she has these ideas from. But we get to see how different he really was. He was the kind of man who would go to the front line, and he took her to the front line because he believed he wanted to face the truth. He wanted to see everything that was going on, almost in the sense of opening your eyes. We get to see his last moments. We see him protecting his daughter, leading us into the sunset that becomes the moment where Vladilina snaps back. It brings us back into the sequence where we now get to speak to our uncle. And he actually gives us a bit of a different perspective, shakes down the perspective that Vladilina has. Her dad may have been speaking about equality, speaking about being the same, but he still didn't act. He was still continuing the cycle because he wasn't taking any actions. It's a shake-up on perspective, and I think it's interesting to see how he feels, where we also get to hear his opinions on the flag and what the flag naturally represents, because all the things that the flag actually represents cannot be found within San Magnolia. So he too is in a sense aware of the farce that is going on. He likens Vladilina to being too obsessed with an ideal. So she's so obsessed with an ideal, something that is unobtainable, that she's kind of closing off her worldview. I love this next visual of Vladilina trapped under all these wires, the wires in the San Magnolia, which fire up the tram lines and the electricity. It feels like she's repressed, she's caged within a system that she hates, so she cannot break free, she can't really do anything about it. But it's all starting to get to her. We hear Theo's words getting louder and louder. Everything in this sequence becomes very, very loud, and it's hard to focus on the words and the translations at the same time, which is part of the point because it's becoming hard for her to even focus. The sunset representing a close of a chapter. After this point, she can no longer go back to being herself. Everything at this point has also changed. She's had a shake up in the way she feels and sees everything. All of the emotions start to build up, where we get the audio getting louder and louder because her head now is becoming too loud. It's becoming too noisy. And this ends up sending her to reach out to Shin. The conversation that takes place now takes place under a full moon within the graveyard. A full moon is often representative of the truth, a honest conversation. Generally, people will believe that if there's a full moon, a truth will come out, or it shines light upon a situation, which I think is nice for the conversation about to happen, because the conversation we're about to go into is raw emotion, is no sugarcoating going on, and it is essentially truthful. We get our apology once more from Vladilina, who in a U-turn, she gives Shin her own name, and then she asks for the names of his units, where it definitely seems to be at least a step in the right direction to seeing somebody as a human and not just livestock. But I have to say I am most impressed with Shin and the way that he handles the entire situation, the way he always is able to remain calm. He doesn't really let his emotions take control too much. He may essentially maybe feel different from the way that Theo is speaking, but this, again, the main core feelings, the history cannot be reversed, so it was definitely there. But the way he handles it, he realizes again that she did not create the situation, and she perhaps can't be faulted and expected to fix it on her own. I just like the way he is. I think he's reliable, and I am very impressed with Shin. I really like him as a character. He's definitely growing on me. We get the horrific truths of the world that most of the people in 86 end up dying within a year. And we also learn that the handlers or people in San Magnolia end up locking the files, making it impossible for handlers to actually read about any of the people fighting. Just maybe as well trying to protect them, making it easier for them to do their job. But as Vladimir puts it, it's a pretty cowardly approach to people who you're forcing to die for yourself. Shin tells us about the names and how he protects the names, how he ends up remembering, which is very similar because we see how Shin and Vladilena both try to remember in their own ways. The music at this point is very beautifully uplifting. It is a piano piece, it's a gorgeous melody, but it's definitely a turning point as he tells us about the way he remembers his fallen comrades. Seeing Vladilena as well being very, very quick to grab her pen and try not to miss a single name because every name is important is a great sense of her determination. Shin also asking for her rank and also addressing her formulae, keeping still this idea of a hierarchy, keeping it formal. I like it. I really think it's a nice little moment in a sense, but it's a really nice way. I think the main thing to take away is just how we remember 86 style. We carry the names forward of the ones who have fallen alongside us. Shin will carry the names somewhere further, so carry them on. We hear that there have been 561 deaths in total. This might just be for one unit, which really puts things into perspective. I don't know how many units there are out there, but there definitely seems to be quite a few handlers. So the death toll is absolutely ridiculously huge. But Shin will never forget. He will remember every single person who fought alongside him, which perhaps also makes me really like the character as a whole. I really like Shin's character, but he says I'll carry them until my final destination, which perhaps will be death for him. At one point, maybe he too will die. The final sequence is really beautiful. The vocals start to kick in. Vladilena starts to prepare to talk to the entire unit, where our credits are kicked off. The final sequence now with Vladilena addressing absolutely everybody, where she ends up giving her own name. It almost feels like we're going back to square one. We're trying to start properly. We're going to start doing things correctly. I'll give you my name and you give me your name. She apologises for her own behaviour. We see that Theo is actually regretful in the way that he said it. So everything he said that he definitely needed to get off his chest. And again, absolutely rightly so that he got what he needed off his chest. But he does regret the tone in which he took, where he actually opens up about his former commander, who actually was an Alba, which is quite interesting. So he had a commander who was an Alba who kept coming back to the front lines. And I do wonder if this is her dad. I don't have enough information to make that call. It could be. It would be interesting to see if there was this link here. But he does say that this guy died in the rear, guarding them, protecting them all. And he died alongside them as, in a sense, an equal. So maybe it was, but we did see her dad dying in a plane crash. So I'm not quite sure if it's him. The moment is it's very nice, but we do obviously come back down to earth right at the end, remembering that as long as you are within your walls, you can never be considered equal, because whilst people are out there risking their lives and you hide away behind those walls, you can't be on the same playing field as them. You can't be accepted. It's baby steps, but it is a really maturely handled sequence. We still get our convictions of the other members, how they all feel that she simply isn't cut out to be a handler. This is an honest conversation. It's not supposed to all be good and happy. It's truth. It's how they feel. We get our group introductions, and then finally Shin gives his name. And this is definitely our key piece of information, where he ends up giving his name and Vladilena recognizes his brother, which leads me to consider, was it his brother who ended up saving her on the battlefield when we saw the plane going down? His mark was a headless knight. So I do wonder if this is going to be the link that draws the two a little bit closer together, as Shin might recognize the fact that she knows his brother and she might actually tell him that story perhaps. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. I do think it might be leaning in that direction. Overall, I really enjoyed this week's episode. I think it does a low moment quite nicely. We're in the lull. We've had a very high octane episode, and now we need downtime. We need to reflect. We need to mourn. We need to take a moment of peace. It's a very beautiful episode. As I say, I'm very impressed with the way that Shin handles everything. I think Shin currently is probably my favourite, alongside Daya. I think Daya as well is one of my favourite characters, just because of the way he is. I think he's quite fun. I do like Raiden as well. Raiden is quite a cool character. I like him. I like the way that he is pretty truthful. He comes out and says, he saw her as that princess, and he does apologise for his own actions as well. Like, he feels bad for the way that he perhaps jotted it up, kind of like made that assumption that she was just this pampered princess in a tower. I like the way that he comes out and admits it, because she was never going to know that he was making fun of her, but he came out and said it nonetheless. I still really like that character. I think it's a great character trait in a sense. So I really enjoyed this week's episode. I hope you guys too. Just enjoyed a little bit of a breakdown, a little bit more of a look into things like symbology and the way that sequences are being set up. I do apologize if I am explaining myself poorly. I promise you, it's just I'm finding the topic very hard to express in a sense. So I really enjoyed today's episode. I hope you guys too enjoyed it. I will see you guys again soon. Hopefully you will tune in to the midway review. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Have a great day, guys. Bye-bye.